Hi everybody, welcome to the Road YouTube channel. And today I'm here with a good buddy of mine, Randy Sheaffer. And I thought we'd kick things off a little bit. I have a cool story as to how God put Randy and I together. And God talks to me through prophetic dreams at times. And sometimes they're just warnings about things that are coming up in my life and I'm going to have to walk through this or that, or he's trying to just give me a heads up as to what's coming. So anyway, I had another friend. I'll tell you, so let me back up a second. So in the dream, I'm invited to go to a new place I've never been, and the place has a balcony. So I walk into this place and I sit down and I'm looking up and I see this balcony and there's people up there walking around. And then a little bit later, someone comes and sits down in front of me at a table, and they slide a loaf of bread across the table to me. And I thought, well, I'm not sure what any of this means. So when I wake up from the dream, I get out my journal and I journal it, write it down. And so about 6 to 8 months later, Randy and I share a mutual friend named Bill, and Bill invites me to the Lemoyne Farmers Market, which I had never been to. And I'm sitting there, and I walk in, I sit down, I'm sitting there, and I'm looking around, and I see the balcony, and I'm like, this feels really familiar. And so that's usually a sign that, to me, that this is a place that God's already kind of shown me. And then it wasn't long after that, if I remember right, you came over and I think you went to get a cup of coffee or something. You may have introduced yourself.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
then
Yeah.
you went to get a cup of coffee and you came back and you had something in a bag. And not long after that, you sat down in front of me and sure enough, you get out a loaf of bread and you said, I don't know why, but I think I'm supposed to give this to you. And you slid it across the table. And I was just like, wow. This is a God thing. So Randy's been a real good friend and a blessing in my life. He and his wife both, Randy and Kathy. And Randy has done a good bit of missions work throughout the years. And I think one of the reasons that God put you in my life was to help me walk through just kind of the healing process of rejection and some of those wounds.
Right.
And so I thought we would share that with the audience today and
Sure.
hopefully be a blessing to some other people out there that God's trying to get healed up. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Randy, how about you take it away and say anything you want to say?
Okay. Well, first of all, it was really a blessing in my life to meet you that day for the first time. Actually, from there on, sparked a friendship that's just grown and grown. And yeah, that loaf of bread, that was kind of strange. I never bought one there before. I remember it was at the pastry counter. I'm more pastry oriented with a lot of sugar and cinnamon and stuff. And I was walking away and I saw it and I thought, I think I'll buy that. And so I bought it. And little did I know that was actually going to be part of establishing a friendship, but also part of dream. So that's the way God works. It's a simplistic, I should probably look at the camera, it's the simplistic ways of walking through this life. It's not complicated. It's just walking in trust and faith and all the trials, thrills and tribulations. Lots of thrills.
Yeah, it is interesting how God uses those little things, and sometimes we don't realize it's significant at all. You know, like you bought that loaf of bread, and
Right.
you just followed whatever you felt was on your heart to do, and you didn't know that how God was using you that day, and
It happens a lot too.
it's really cool.
Just things that you feel sudden impact or urge to do, and you do it thinking, why did I do this? And later, it actually has a purpose.
Right.
Many times, and most times, the purpose is for somebody else's life to encounter a blessing or a hope, or an answer to life's crazy things that happen. So
yeah. I just want to say too, like, you know, I remember before meeting you that I was asking the Lord, like he had kind of removed me from some different relationships that I was in. and I was asking him for, a mentor type person to come along because I felt like that's what I needed, and he provided that for me through our friendship and your willingness to share and be open about where you've been. And so I'm saying that because, I don't know who's going to watch this, but I want to encourage you that, maybe you didn't have the best parents growing up, or you didn't have, the type of mentoring or leadership that you should have in formative years, but God is faithful to provide you with an earthly person sometimes who can fill that role or be some of those pieces that you need to help you move forward. Our parents, most parents do the best they can. But at the end of the day, we're all beings. We're all human beings, and we have our shortcomings and our limitations. And we have to also, as kids, we have to have grace for our parents and their limitations, but also give them the grace and understanding that they probably did the best that they could for us. And so, if you do find yourself in a situation where you need someone like a Randy, I just encourage you to, number one, read your Bible. You can certainly learn a lot from what the Lord teaches us there, but also to ask him for, someone on this earth who can help guide you along a little bit, because he's faithful to do that.
Yes, he is.
And he knows that he created us for a relationship, not only with himself, but with each other.
That's right.
And as a body of believers, it's important that we have people like the Randys and Kathys who are willing to kind of fill in some of those places where maybe we're hurting or having a hard time walking through something. So I thank you for being that in my life, and I'm grateful to God for putting you in my life.
And same to you. It's been a good experience. Much more to go.
That's right. That's
Amen.
right.
Amen.
So Randy and I talked a little bit about some stories that I'd like you to share on the topic of rejection, because I have come to you for advice on how to handle some of the different situations that I needed to learn how to handle. And Randy's been a wealth of wisdom for me in that regard. And so by sharing this, we're hoping that we can bless and encourage other people, that you can learn from our experiences, but you can hopefully, more than anything, see the goodness and faithfulness of God to walk us through these things, and sometimes it's through other people. So that being said, Randy, could you kick us off a little bit maybe with your coming into this world and what that was like, and you know the story I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so if you're anything you're willing to share.
Well, this is good. I've probably never really shared this other than personally with a few people in my life. But it all began with the coming into this world, the rejection part. Actually, my mother got pregnant at age 14 in 1949. And it was in the summer of 49, I believe the month of June, somewhere around there, because of a strong-willed older family member forced her to go to Philadelphia to get an abortion. And I tell the story because she told this to me when I was 55 years of age. So that long I didn't know it. So it wasn't my mother's will, but she was young, she was fearful at that time. As I've come to learn, a girl being pregnant then wasn't treated with much respect, actually treated with no respect.
Right.
You were shunned, and so it was hard on her. So they sent her to Philadelphia with $250. They said that's what it cost. This would have been, I believe, June or early July, 49. And I was next in line at the clinic to be aborted that day.
Wow.
About started off with rejection. But it actually became the healing of my life. And of course, when she presented the paperwork, they wanted $1,200, not $250, which she didn't have. And so I guess for my good and for hers, it didn't happen that day.
Right.
But I learned through the years there's a spiritual scar comes with the willingness to, would you say, surrender to that horrendous practice of abortion. And that carried through my life as a destruction, but also as a learning tool, and also as creating just a true picture of what life is really about, how precious life is, how valuable it is. So anyways, my mother and I, it was hard to have a good relationship growing up. I loved her. I knew she loved me, but she carried the scar inside her all those years of wanting to tell me that she was going to have me aborted, but she just could never do it, so she more alienated herself than most of the time. But the good part of it is, from the time about 55 on, we became best of friends. So a lot of things happened during that time. I don't know how far he wants me to go with this, because this is a story that is a little bit like Indiana Jones. It was quite a challenge through life, because I learned about the dark, deep spiritual realm of the kingdom of darkness, which what abortion comes out of. That when, I will say who it was, when my great-grandfather, when he made these arrangements, in a sense, it was a contract with death.
Right.
But
right.
even though my mother did not have the money, the contract wasn't canceled, and it chased me.
So if I can interject just a little bit, yeah. So what you're talking about is within Christianity, I didn't grow up with this understanding, but I'm coming to see how true it really is. But what you're talking about is levels of authority.
Right.
And your grandfather, because he was the protector, your great-grandfather, I'm sorry, yeah, had a level of authority, of spiritual authority over your mom, and therefore over your life, and how that filters down.
Yeah.
And so that created some ongoing tension, obviously, in the family, and how he chose to handle that. Made it harder for your mom, obviously harder for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. He demanded it. There was no turning away from that. She was young.
And I'm sorry. It also created on this. I made it very physical, but it's actually very spiritual. It really released a curse.
Absolutely.
Over your life and your lives, and you can feel free to go into that as much as you want. But
there was a contract of death against me. It's followed me the whole way up till the very time I live in now. I just turned 76. Although it's never was able to be victorious, because there's a greater one, which we'll get to talk about. But I've learned a lot during that time, and I've learned great compassion for others through it. And the blessing of it is that my mom we were able to reconcile around age 55. It was my wife Kathy. We had lived in Mexico for like 5 years, and there was just so little communication with Mom, but yet I wanted it. And she said, "It's time to build a bridge to your mom." And I thought, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. It's like going to a yard where the dog bites you every time you go. But I knew that God was speaking through her, and it really became such a blessing in our life. And we did, and within a year's time, we were just like hanging out all the time together. And she didn't understand the spiritual end until later. And I'm not sure even to start on that, but it began as an early child when I said there was a contract on my life. I think that's one of the things we're talking about.
Yeah.
Abortion is evil.
Yeah.
Now, do I feel, what would you say, compassion for those that are with that situation? Absolutely.
Right.
Do I judge anybody that's ever had one? No. I've ministered, my wife and I, to dozens, if not hundreds, that have gone through that or contemplated it. And it's never from a shame on you standpoint. It's realizing that there's something going on in their life.
Yeah.
Fear, whatever it may be.
Nobody sets out to do that,
Right.
Unless there's diabolical satanic influence in which they're
Right.
playing around with sacrifices, etc. But that's not the majority of people. Most people are in a situation they probably didn't want to be in, and they're scared, and they just feel they have no way out. Or
14 years old in 1949.
Yeah, a lot of shame in the culture about everything. Yeah,
it was. I remember, I remember my great-grandfather up till age 2, I remember. And he could only address me as the bastard.
Wow.
Yeah. So even though the enemy tried to make those things stick, God worked all things out for the good.
How did you walk through that, right? Because that kind of labeling an identity at an early age,
you could feel the shame of that.
Yeah.
Even at birthday, he would give me degrading present.
Wow.
I remember him through one Christmas and one birthday, but very demeaning, nasty gifts. And he was just, had to learn to forgive later.
Yeah.
But you know what? It became more of a teaching tool for me to learn how to live above the mess of this world.
Right.
My joy never got stole from me. I've been on the edge of just between this life and going on to the next one 8 different times. 17 different times of very serious attacks. And I haven't written much about it or talked much about it because I wasn't sure that was such a good story till I realized it's very liberating. Because usually you want to have the story to tell people about, I went through this perfect life, raised lots of money, had lots of kids.
Yeah, right.
And
but that's not reality for any,
it's not
for any
reality.
of us. Yeah.
It was actually the devastating blows to my life that gave us the opportunity to bring hope and encouragement. Like we lived in Mexico, thousands of lives have been changed because of the story of our life.
Right.
Both of us. So, but it started early. The closest event, I was age 3, and I almost bled to death. Just woke up one morning, couldn't move, lost most of my blood.
Wow.
Just because a tooth was pulled the day before, baby tooth. And they don't know how I survived that. I spent a couple days in the hospital. They transfused me and everything at 3 years of age. But even then, the enemy couldn't take my life.
So have you ever used that as an excuse, when your wife thinks you're acting funny or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's
hey,
right.
Can't help it. I don't know whose blood I got, right?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I remember that morning. Couldn't move a finger. There was so much blood loss. The bed was drenched.
Wow.
And God kept me, though. And so that was 3. Then age 4, this was the beginning of interesting time. Thank God he gave me a pause through some years so I could live a rebellious, hellion teenager years. So at age 4, my family, apart from what we talked about before, my great-grandfather was dead then. They really loved me. My grandfather then came in acted as a dad. So I'm really honorable for those things. But they bought me a new bike for Christmas of 53. I think it was Christmas 53, yeah. Of course, it was winter, so who can ride a bike then? But it was one of the ones with training wheels, because I always wanted a bike. And so spring came, and they were teaching me to ride it. Had the wheels on it, and so I was getting pretty good on my own. It was April of '54. I think it was Palm Sunday. So there was a little schoolyard near our house, and it was fenced in, but there was like a ramp off the main road down into the schoolyard. And I used to like to ride the bike as fast as I could across the schoolyard, hit that ramp, swing the wheel, and catapult across to the other corner, keep doing that. Well, one of my trips, the timing was off. I flew right out on the highway. 54 Buick got me. That's like getting hit with a tank.
Yeah, right. The cars were all metal then.
Broadside.
There's no plastic. Yeah, right.
And there's a lot of stories behind that, but needless to say, it didn't go good for me. But all I remembered was the squealing of the tires, the sound of an impact, and nothing until I heard my mom scream. Then all of a sudden I was like, I remembered the story then. But then through my life, that kind of trauma kind of disappeared, but I'd have these glimpses of seeing a bike wrapped around a fence, all these people standing around somber. Like, there was for those from that age, on Sundays, everybody the guys wore gray top coats and hats, and, it was like dress Sunday. You stay dressed all day long. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing all these, I was looking from above. I was wondering, what the heck are these visions I have at night? Looking down like 30, 40 feet to see all these people. I could see the top of their hats. I could see a car. I could see a body laying under the car by the passenger wheel, actually under the passenger wheel. I thought, I wonder what that is. So it went on for years, and till I found out later in another event I had that was me.
Wow.
But I wasn't there, because I was having another dream or vision or open story of being held by somebody high in the air. surrounded by a choir. I thought it was a Catholic choir, like 9 choir members, but they're all like 12 or 13 feet tall, and they were singing. But I could not hear a word from the earthly level, and we were like in a light merry-go-round, going around, going up. So I know now who was holding me, and you probably know too. It was, I didn't see the face, but I knew it was God, and I knew they were angels. They were really beautifully dressed. I mean, I still remember the intricacy of, they had wine-colored robes on with like ivory attachments to it, and they had like crown hats on them, very thin, 12, 13 feet tall. I don't know how I knew that, but I knew that. There was 9 of them. And so when my mother screamed, all of a sudden I was back to life in my body again. Then I heard the ambulance coming. And I got hit by a 54 Buick going 35 miles an hour. My head dented the hood of it. Now, if you knew what the hoods are, we used to sled in them when I was an older kid.
Yeah.
They were like tanks.
Yep.
And that particular Buick had, they had those like hood ornaments with like a jet or a rocket.
Yep.
My uncles were laughing. They were younger kids then. You know, they were like teenagers. They were like, man, that thing missed your head by 6 inches. Could have dove right through your head. And it did. Wow. I saw the picture. And anyways, I didn't have a broken bone. When they left me in the hospital, I had a couple scratches. That's it.
Wow. Not
a broken bone. No real bruises. So I know there's something. It wasn't until later I realized I was actually gone.
Right.
My heart had stopped beating. I was actually dead for a short period of time there. But God brought me, God brought me back to life. And life went on. As the beginning of many other stories, Dwayne.
Yes,
it was like,
yes, Randy has
would this ever quit?
A plethora of near-death experiences.
Yeah.
So what you had said to me one time that you're the only person to survive
sepsis 5 times.
Yeah, sepsis 5 times.
Yeah. I was like, I was beginning to think, hell hates me and heaven doesn't want me.
Yeah.
But it was actually, again, going back to that same time, God and Satan were in a confrontation. Right. Satan had a contract in my life. God had a covenant with my life.
So
that makes sense?
And Satan had the authority to demand that contract,
right,
because of what your grandfather
did
put over you guys, right, when you were coming into the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you mentioned something else there. It's really important. You said, what was it? Heaven doesn't want me.
Yeah. Hell hates me and heaven doesn't want me.
Right. Yeah. But that's there again. That's a lie from the enemy.
Yeah.
That in our place of wounding and hurt and brokenness, he slips that stuff in there, and then we start to believe it. Exactly. And that's the other part of this whole thing that's so dangerous, is when we by our own beliefs. God is at war really with getting us to believe the right things, the things that are true, right? But sometimes when we believe those lies from the enemy, we empower that, and then we start to live a defeated life because we're believing that lie rather than the truth. Exactly. And you told me one other time about how God repositioned that for you.
Yeah.
How he gave you a new interpretation of that. What was that like for you?
I'll try to put that into context. I'm not even sure how to answer that because he did so much, but...
Well, as I recall, I'll put it this way: you feel free to chime in.
Yeah,
as I recall, what God showed you at one of these times when your heart was crying out to Him.
Right.
Is what I gathered from your previous story. Is your heart was crying out to Him. You feel like Satan's always coming after me. I always have this target on my back.
Exactly.
And God kind of showed you. It kind of goes back to a verse. I'm going to bring up a verse here real quick. I encourage the audience to check this out. But in John 9:2 and 3, the disciples come to Jesus and they say, is this boy? The boy was paralyzed or blind, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And they say, is this boy blind because of his sin or the sin of his parents?
Yeah.
And Jesus says neither. Right. And what I liked about that was it's this change in perspective where he's not focused on the sin and on the behavior, but he's focused on what is God going to do with this situation, and how is God going to use the situation for his glory. So he then says back to them, he says, well, neither. It's for the glory of God, and he does a miracle and sets the kid free, right?
Right, exactly.
So that verse in John 9:2 and 3, your story reminded me of that, because for you, if I remember right, we were sitting at a restaurant the one day, and you said that God kind of took that spirit of rejection and that lie and reinterpreted it, and basically said, you're seeing it as you've had 17 near-death experiences, but you've overcome through me. You've overcome all 17,
Right.
and now you have a different level of authority to break that off of other people.
That's good.
And to create real change.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.
No, that's right on, because in the midst of all that, he gave us a great compassion for people, a love for people. Actually, one of the points you're talking about was some of the most difficult times I had doing a lot of years of this stuff was that from some of my believer friends, it was more shaming of what I was going through than encouraging. And we love each other. I'm not mean-spirited. So one friend one day, it was just like, I literally had a timeshare at the local hospital. I still have it, but I don't use it anymore. So anyways, he said to me one day, I'm confused about all the battles you're going through, sickness. He said, I thought true Christians weren't supposed to be sick. And that was like a really hard blow, because I just got out of the hospital. So it made you feel like, okay, there's a failure here. I'm a failure, you know what I mean?
Back to rejection.
Back to rejection.
Right, spirit of rejection, yeah.
And I was just looking at him. I didn't know what to say, because I really love the guy. We're good friends. And I heard the voice of the Lord. And that might sound crazy to somebody, but that first experience with the car when I died was in the Lord's hands, opened the heavens to me. And it's been open ever since then. I see just beyond this realm a lot. So,
and what you're talking about is seeing into the spirit world.
Right, exactly, and hearing.
Okay.
Now, I can't make it happen. It's when God wants to. Mm-hmm. So I was there staring, and I hear this voice so clear in my heart. Tell him how much I delivered you from. That wasn't Satan's voice, that was God. I said to him, well, look, I don't understand or have any answer to what you said about Christians not being sick, but I can tell you this. I know how much God delivered me from. I said, then right away a scripture came through me, which is in, I think, Psalm 18. He says, he delivered me, that's God, because he delighted in me. Same with you. When he delivers us, he delights in it. Even if he delivered my soul in one of those times to heaven, he still delighted in me.
Right.
It's still win-win. So then another time, it was like I was really under assault with people, because Christianity couldn't understand what I was going through, because they're taught the positive gospel, which I believe in a positive gospel. I believe in all that stuff, because I'm just more tested in the healing end. And she said,
and let me just clarify a little bit, because I'm not sure who's going to watch. But what we're talking about, let me put it this way: what I'm talking about is Joel Osteen and those types of people are telling you half truths.
Yeah,
you're going to go through hard times. Scripture says if you read it, if you're reading this book, you will go through hard times. Mm-hmm. But what Christ did on the cross can get you through those hard times and can make you stronger on the other end of it. So this really kind of positive, I'm going to call it a positive pop, emasculated kind of gospel, it's not the full truth.
No.
And what we're trying to do today is share what the full truth kind of looks like. We're talking about the spirit of rejection and how it affected this man's life, but at the same time, we're not denying that things were hard, things were painful, you shed a lot of tears, you went through a lot of stuff, but God was faithful to see you through it and to teach you how to fight the battles along the way, and how to help younger people like myself, how to fight through what you've already fought through.
Exactly.
And now you have this tool set to help us reinterpret our lives and look at things correctly from God's perspective.
Right.
And we're not denying the pain and the realities, but but we're just trying to say God can get you through it.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live a good life. I'm not in any way discouraged about it. I've learned a lot. Yeah, one time, a lady come up to me in that time of, I guess I was really put to the test. So she says, they were telling me about all the battles you've been through in the hospital for this. I said, yes, still working on it. I'm smiling. I'm not walking around with a dejected face. I kind of got permanent smile. She says, I think you have a demon. So, where do you need grace in those times?
Right, right.
Again, I'm just looking at her, and I never said a word to her, but I hear this voice inside, you're looking at one. It was speaking through her to me.
So what it was doing is kind of reinforcing that, right, that curse of rejection.
Right.
Yeah.
It wanted me actually to, what you would say, renounce God. Then it could finish its work.
Like Job.
Right.
Yeah.
Break your contract, then I'll get you. So that happens so many times through life. So this has been a learning experience. I just have to believe that the things that my wife and I both have been through, we have a good life too. We're blessed. We've been around the world. And is that it was to be a hope and help to others. Right. Sometimes Christians, God love them, they get in this little circle and they forget there's a world out there full of broken people.
Yep.
And when we're being light to a world, but we don't light it up very well sometimes. I wouldn't even know where to go with the rest of the stories. There's so many of them. Actually, they're kind of fun to talk about right now. But
do you want to talk about the thumb? I don't know.
I think that's going to be part of the story I need to write about, because that was further indication of the destruction of abortion.
Yeah.
So when my mother had to work at a very young age, quit school just to support me, she had to live in Philadelphia working for a restaurant. I was raised by my grandparents. She was home on the weekends, or I was down with her. And early days, our relationship was pretty good. It's, I guess, as I grew up and became more of a teenage mentality, we got kind of separated for a long period of time. But anyways, my grandma would watch me. And sometimes, many times, this nauseated feeling would come over me. I was only like 4 years old then. Very nauseated feeling. I can't believe, like the worst you can imagine. And then I would see above me, I was actually seeing it in the spirit, not knowing, I'd see this big bloody thumb, like trying to squash me out. I would run and hide in the closet, hide under the couch, and for 10 or 15 minutes it would move around like a cloud with a bloody thumb in it, trying to smudge me out. And that terrible sickness feeling I had, and it never was able to get to me. And then it just disappeared, never showed up again after a year or so. Never told anybody about it because I was too embarrassed to. But I remember it was huge. It was about the size of a baseball glove. And it was bloodied with blood dripping off to it, which I became later to realize that was an aborted fetus, so to speak.
Okay.
It represented the hand of abortion.
Mm-hmm.
And
you could see that in the spirit.
I could see it. I could still see it clear as day right now. It hovered right over me and made me feel like death has overtaken you. There's a nauseated inside feeling.
And I think that's important for people to understand too, because I've, in my own journey, one of the things we've talked about is like the spirit of suicide, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
And how, excuse me, you can have a friend of mine. You can look this up if you're interested. But a friend of mine named Joseph Jameson. He's out in Arizona, and he wrote a book called, I should have got it out. I think it was called the Tree of Rejection, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, feel free to look up Joseph Jameson. The artwork is a tree that's growing out of the mind, or maybe it's the tree of the mind, or something like that. Anyway, what I'm driving at is sometimes there are groups of spirits that work together, and they're trying, basically, Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so these spirits are trying to influence your thinking and getting you to act on their desires for you, right? So in my case, it was oppressive thoughts.
Right.
Life feels overwhelming.
Yes.
I don't feel like I have the tools to handle this.
Right.
I'm being
Understand that.
shown scenarios in my mind of this could happen, this could happen, this could happen, right? And then the next one is it goes from oppressive thoughts to depression. So you start to make it all internal. I don't know how to handle this. I don't have the tools. I'm just feeling sad and overwhelmed. And then you go to, well, I could just end it all. And in my life, I went through that cycle where these three spirits were kind of working together. And I went through that probably 3 or 4 times. And I remember the last time I was laying in my bed, and it was incredible. It was within a couple of minutes. I went from, or I shouldn't say I went from, they went from oppressive thoughts, depression, suicide in that
Yes.
order. And it was like you were in a toilet, and they were just taking you down, 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 and trying to convince you to end yourself. And then within myself, I kind of realized, I'm like, wait a second, I have free will here, and I can choose what I accept or do not accept, right? What I think about or don't think about. And that goes back to the spiritual authority piece that we were talking about earlier with your grandfather.
Right.
And so I just said out loud something like, I reject that in Jesus' name, and I choose to believe something else. In other words, I'm not going to accept this layer of thinking, these 3 different layers, and I'm not going to come to that final conclusion that you want me to come to, regardless of what you're showing me, regardless of how true it feels. I choose to believe that there is something bigger and something that has more authority and something that can get me through this. And when I said it out loud, then it was just like it started to lift.
Right.
And it just went away. And so now it's kind of like that becomes a tool in my toolbox, and it can be a tool for you in your toolbox, where Jesus has that final authority to break any attempt that the enemy's trying to snuff you out, so to speak, with that,
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, how did you kind of fight off that, that vision? Because you're seeing this thing in the spirit. How did it shift or lift for you?
I was a 4-year-old child. I didn't know how to, but what I can say now to you is what I learned later, is that God was completely committed to me. He still is, as he is you, anybody that looks out to him. He was committed to me, so that's probably how I got through that. Because there's other things to come.
Right.
And I remember the time it left. That's another story. But he's covenanted with us, and that's understanding a lot about covenants. We don't have time to talk about that. But his covenant with us is that he would literally give his life for us, and he has given his life.
Right.
That was there was called the threshold covenant of the old Jewish culture. That when you crossed the threshold into their house, they covenanted their life to you to protect you. So I found comfort in that, wishing these things would end, but at the same time, our lives have impacted thousands and thousands of people. So if that's the price to see others, there's so many young children in Mexico that have not committed suicide, not because we're so great, just we allow God to work through us to turn, because in the culture of Mexico, the highest rate of death is teen suicide. And it's in all the nations of South America.
And what I believe or what's coming to my mind, there's another verse in Scripture, I don't have a reference for it, but it talks about when you're a Christian and you're trying to live your life in the way that Christ would have you live it, you're willing to bear his sufferings, so to speak. You're willing to suffer for the benefit of other people the same way that he suffered for us, for our benefit. And that's really kind of what you're, that idea.
Maybe now, but some of the times it wasn't so much like that.
Right.
The learning, why is this happening? You know what I mean? Like identity. Why am I here? What's my purpose?
Right.
And so, yeah. And you know what? That's really what true, authentic Christianity looks like. You're willing to lay down your life for somebody else, and whatever it may be. I mean, there's others, but I can tell about happy stories too.
Yeah, I think we should probably get into identity too, because that's kind of where this all seems to.
Relationship and identity. Okay, it's the relationship with God that I have, and His desire to know me, to be with me, and my desire to know him that keeps it all together. Because I'm at the point now, there's another story we can tell. I asked God for more time here. But, so his relationship's so real, it's so easy to hear his voice, to know what's on his heart, know what's on his mind. And he really gets a bad rap in this world. But he also likes to have fun.
He gets misrepresented a lot.
Yeah, he gets misrepresented.
Yeah.
But he likes to have fun. And so one fun story, there's many of them, but I'll do this one. This is a riot. I love trout fishing. I love to be along the stream because I see everything through the eyes of God. It's almost like the beauty of a fish, the water, everything. I get caught up in little stones on the bottom or something. So it was in June of 2003. And it's happened many times since then, but this is a particular special time. So getting ready to go to church the Sunday morning, it was a beautiful day, and I thought, man, do I really want to go to church today? It was a gorgeous Sunday. And then you had to wear ties. Thank God we got delivered from that. I was trying to figure out how to retie a tie.
It's a little more stuffy then.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were looking for a little more of a freeing experience.
Yeah, like getting on the bike and heading out in the highways and byways. And because, so anyways, they're getting ready, and I hear this voice, as clear as yours. I knew where it came from. It says, "Let's go fishing today." So Kathy was just inside. My wife was in the other room. I said, "Honey?" She said, "Yeah. I think Jesus just invited me to go fishing today." And what's one of the wonderful things about my wife is she goes, "Then you better get going. Get that rod and get to the stream." I said, "I'm out of here."
You got a good woman there, bro.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So I called one of my best friend at that time up. He's still a great friend. And I said, "Hey, Bill, Jesus invited me to go fishing. Do you want to go?" He says, "Oh, you're so unstable." He goes, "I'm just going to go to make sure you get through this day alive." So I said, "No, he invited me to go fishing." And it's a summer morning, 10:30 now. You should usually coming back out of the streams then, right? Because it's hot.
Yep.
He says, "It's already on." I said, "No, we're supposed to go now." So we went up the old breaches. Now, normally you catch 3, 4, or 5 trout. We get up there, it's like heaven had dumped onto us. We caught 42 trout in 2.5 hours. And it's the funny part.
God is the giver of abundance, right?
I already had caught 2 trout that one was 25 inches, and one was the very rare brook trout, a 23-inch, and one was about 5 pounds. Every fish I caught, I gave mercy to, put him back. But I remember, and it was like phenomenal day. So it was coming towards the end. It was like 1 in the afternoon. And we're kind of out of energy, and Bill, he's still not a believer in this. I mean, he's a believer, but he was like, this is witchcraft taking place today. I said, well, if it is, I'm going to have fish this more. So we're standing on a concrete culvert over the Yellow Breaches, and it's like some farm water comes out through. It's a little murky and brown and a beautiful clear stream right there coming by. And he said, "Sheaffer, I don't know what's going on with you today. You could probably catch a big trout out of this mud hole right below us." And he's standing there beside me in the culvert. I said, "Probably. Could happen. But I'm all tangled up now." I had this bird's nest, and my minnow was dangling here over that dirty water, and I'm trying to, and all of a sudden this huge trout jumps up out of the water and grabs the bait. And when it does, Bill loses his balance and falls flat in his face off there into the stream, completely submerged. And finally got him out, and I said, "Don't mock God, bro." And I was holding the 27-inch brown trout that I caught right there. That was the 42nd trout for that day in less than 3 hours.
Wow.
And so that was one of his fun times. And I still can't get my friend Bill to admit that God was in that day. Now, I've had 2 other days like that since then, but he determines those days. I can't, "Hey, can you go fishing with me today?" But anyways, in the midst of turmoil, there's always those pleasant times with God.
Right.
Had visitation with him. But anyways, in the midst of this, I just like the people to hear the story that we can have. In this world, you can have tribulation, but we're to be joyful that God has overcome it.
Yep. Yeah, and it's not if, it's when. And then it's a matter of,
Yes.
he can get you through it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He can get us through it. I'm always amazed at just the different times he'll talk or lead me into something.
Yeah.
Whether it was knowing you or buying a truck or a motorcycle a couple of years ago, or
Sure.
just the things that we pray about and care about, he also cares about.
That's
And
right.
it's amazing how good he is and how loved we are, and yet we struggle. Speaking personally, it's like we struggle to feel that and let that be the reality we live from. And I guess in saying that, I'm coming back to identity, right?
Yeah.
How did maybe you could talk a little bit about, so you got this curse thing on you. Is that something you prayed through with anybody to help that break off of you, or
Yeah, quite a few times. I believe it's
because we're getting back to the authority piece,
right.
right? Your grandfather put that curse. So where does the authority come to break something like that off somebody's life?
I believe the curse is broken off. It's a hard question to answer. I believe it's broken off of me, but it's still, the contract still remains.
Okay.
Because Satan's relentless, he won't give up. But I believe in the terms that I can walk peacefully through this earth. And maybe it's as God allows me to mature.
So would you say, maybe I'll phrase it and you tell me if this is accurate. Would it be accurate to say that Satan can try and enforce it, but at the end of the day, he can't get it done without your agreement?
Absolutely right. Without God's approval.
Yeah, right.
No. I just know that the day I do leave this earth is by the hand of God. Now, unless I do something stupid, get in the car and drive 100 miles an hour, that's different. But
Right, because we all have free will.
I'm a slow driver, so.
And that plays into it. Free will is big, though. That's a whole other subject.
There's a lot of stories in this yet. There's like 20 stories within one story, and probably the one to go with that took place in 2018. The second time to have sepsis, and it was a really nasty case. And so I was in West Shore Hospital, and my wife and her friend came in that Sunday night to pray over me because I was really sick. And funny thing, sick but no fear. Just kind of weird how there was that covering hand even over me then. And they really prayed, and they left when it was like 9:30 at night. It was a lonely night because I couldn't sleep. Sepsis was turning into septic shock that night, which has not much chance of survival a lot of times. And
Unless it's Randy.
yeah, it's true. And so this is going to be a story that's probably going to seem a little weird in a little while, but it's as true as I'm looking at you right now. So they had left, and I remember that couldn't sleep, and man, my blood, all the readings on the monitor, I could see them. I couldn't communicate anymore verbally, but I could see them. And I thought, well, blood pressure in the 50s, that doesn't look too good. Then it went to the 40s. Then all these people were coming, the constant flow of people coming in, checking everything, looking in my eyes. Then I saw my blood pressure 32/41 or something like that. I thought, well, that's definitely not good. And I was really feeling bad. My heart and everything was just going crazy. And I thought, I was sitting there, it was 1:30 in the morning. I'll never forget this. Now, there wasn't the nurses that just left because the doctor just came in and said, well, and he comes up to me and he goes, are you all right? I can't say anything. I'm looking at the monitor. It's like, what do you think? It's 32 is my blood pressure. And so it was 1:30. I thought, oh man, 6:30 in the morning could be a whole different picture to my life. I may be in heaven then. And so here we go. All of a sudden, at the end of my bed, nobody was in the room at that time, is a man standing. I visibly could see him from about right here up, although he was standing there. And what caught my attention right away, if I can tell these things, was his hair. I thought, wow.
It's always the hair,
It was beautiful, silvery white with like a cobalt blue. It was releasing blue color through it. Beautifully, wavy. And he was an older looking man, but yet very tender. I mean, there was no wrinkles like we older people. And everything about him smiled. Not like me, I have to open my mouth to smile to you. His ears, his eyes, his face, everything smiled, his hair. Not saying a word, just looking at me there. And then it caught my attention the most. And this is where some people say, you're crazy. He had wire rim glasses on. silver, pure silvery cobalt blue wire rimmed glasses. Okay? And we're looking, and I don't know if I was seeing from the inside or the outside, but I was looking at him as clear as I'm looking at you. And I knew he wasn't going to say anything. I was to say something. You know what I mean? I knew it was God.